Hi everybody, I'm Todd Banner. Welcome to my channel. Previously I'd done two videos on my thoughts on stock photography. An initial one where I brought into question whether it's really even worth it to continue doing stock photography, considering how much work is involved in editing and keywording, captioning of images, and how low fees have gotten and how low the actual split has gotten now, because most stock agencies offer less than 50% to the photographer, which to me, it's your image. I don't think you should ever get less than 50%. Second one that I did was about Paul Hardy, another stock photographer, in an interview with him that I found online. He started at about the same time I did. And he's saying very similar things, and I think he's done better early on than I did, but he now feels, I think, kind of the same way I do. But I think that I mentioned that I would show some of my stock images and kind of give a talk about the images and what kind of fees they brought in and so on. So I've gotten, I think, about 11 images here to show, and going back to the early 2000s. There's one film image in there, which is interesting. I caught it as I was doing this, and I realized it was a scan, which I've noted in a subtitle. But you'll see here, going through these images, there's a general theme of prices going down as far as what they license for, with one exception. So watch this to the end to see that. And I also give some information about how I get certain images, at least one type of image that I really like getting, involving speeding emergency vehicles. So I give some tips on how I do that. So have a look at this, and then I'll be back with a follow-up at the end. This is the first image that licensed for me after I signed up with LUMIX. Obviously, kind of a health-related image. It's still life of vitamin tablets and capsules, red multivitamin, and the yellow capsule is vitamin E, and orange vitamin C tablets. Licensed for $97, a little bit more than that, for print magazine, interior use, 1/8 of a page. So that's not too shabby. And this is the second image that I sold after signing up with LUMIX, and these two sales came pretty quickly after my first submission. This is the parking level of one of the marina towers in Chicago, collectively known as Marina City, and it sold for just a bit over $350. So you can imagine, this being my second sale and that I got 60% of the split, I was pretty excited. I don't know what the use was because it was royalty free, and that information was not included in the sale information. By the time this image sold, which was about 9 months later, I'd already had several sales with LUMIX. This one is of Mitchell Pass at Scotts Bluff National Monument in Nebraska. And that highway you see with a car on it in the background is the highway follows the old Oregon Trail. And so we have the two Conestoga wagons kind of looking like they're going parallel to that highway through what's called Mitchell Pass, which is a pass through Scotts Bluff. So this sold for a 2-page spread inside a print textbook, and it sold that for that use. It was $479, and of course today an image wouldn't get anywhere near that amount. The next month, this image sold. This is an image of Cloudgate in Chicago, the sculpture in Millennium Park, more colloquially known as the Bean. And when the Bean was new, it had seams. And so I took this before they polished the seams. It's an interior view. Shot this with the Canon 10D and a 17-40L lens at its widest setting. So it's about a 27mm full frame equivalent. And it licensed for a book cover, a college art textbook book cover. and the license fee was $622. Again, I was pretty excited. This is about a month after the Scotts Bluff image sold. Also, this image and several similars have sold for other uses as well. So this particular subject has made me a fair amount of money. In July of 2007, I attended a political conference in Chicago, and there was a presidential debate as part of this conference. And so I arrived in the hall for that debate early and got a front row seat. And of course, this is one of the candidates, Barack Obama. And I shot this with the original Canon 5D and the 70-300 diffractive optics Canon lens, the DO lens, which wasn't a very fast lens, but you got to remember there was stage lighting, and so there was more than enough light to use that lens. And anyway, this is a stock photographer's dream image, because this licensed several times in 2008 and of course again in 2012 for a total of over 25 times, and the gross for that total was over $1,600. So if you can shoot something that's going to sell several times, I think this image licensed for as much as almost 250 and as low as around 80, but it adds up. The thing I think makes this image, of course, is the sole of his shoe there, so you can tell he's been on his feet a lot. And of course, all the use of this image was editorial. In 2008, Weekly Reader, the children's news magazine, used this image several times. So, you know, it's being in the right place, right time, but also the fact that I was relatively involved and able to go to this conference and get myself in a situation where I could come away with this shot. So sometimes you make your own luck. This image licensed more recently. In 2016, I licensed twice. One for around $40, once for around $20 or a little bit over $20. So now we're getting into the time period when prices have really started to fall. But it's part of a genre that I do of speeding emergency vehicles with a blur. And here's how I do that. If I'm walking around, you know, Chicago or any other town, I hear an emergency vehicle siren, I set my camera up to give me the ability to get this kind of image. So I set the lens to its smallest aperture setting. That's going to be f/16, f/22. I set it to aperture priority and let the shutter speed fall where it will. And I set the ISO as low as it'll go. So on a Canon, it would be 100, unless you're using extended ISO. I think they go down to 50. And on my LUMIX cameras, 200, unless usually I use the extended ISO setting and go down to 100. And again, image quality is not a huge consideration right here because we're blurring the image. So as that vehicle gets close, I also have the camera set to continuous drive, and when that vehicle gets close, I let it rip. And as it goes by, I pan. I also have to have it set to continuous autofocus, of course. And usually I'll get a bunch of images where one or two look pretty good. And on modern cameras, what you can do is save that setting to one of your custom settings. So on Lumix cameras, there's usually 3 custom settings, maybe less on the lower end models, but on my G9 I have 3 custom settings where I can save how the camera is set up. So all I have to do when I hear a siren is turn the mode dial to that custom setting, and boom. So each one of these images in this family, you know, licenses a few times, but as a whole, the subject does really well. So it's something to think about if you're walking around a town anywhere. Keep your ears open for a siren, and then get ready to shoot by having the camera set up before. You can have it set up in a custom setting before you even start walking around. But you get some pretty cool results. This is probably one of the better ones that I've got. A word that people shooting stock photography should keep in mind is concept. Conceptual images will sell. And in 2013, I was walking down Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and I had a concept pop right out in front of me. I came upon two coffee shops, a Starbucks and a Caribou Coffee, right next to each other, and the word competition went right through my mind. So this image says competition. Interestingly, this image is licensed one time. A few years later, Caribou Coffee pulled out of the Chicago area, and there was an online story about that, and that's what this image licensed for, and it was only about $30. And at this point, online images online use does not bring in as much as print use, and unfortunately these days most use is online, but that's progress. Remember to shoot locally. Shoot your local town. I live in Oak Park, Illinois, adjacent to the west side of Chicago. This is downtown Oak Park, Marion Street in spring, with our Bradford pears in bloom. And this image licensed for $200 for a marketing package. So don't be thinking that if you can't travel, because we just went through a year of not being able to travel, that you can't get usable photographs if you're shooting stock. Here's an image that I shot in 2011, and it is sold twice this year, once for educational use and once for use in a print and online magazine. I think the educational use was around $60 and the magazine use was around $40. Again, prices aren't what they used to be. But again, this is the bank building in downtown Oak Park at the corner of Marion and Lake Streets. And I was walking by, looked at that, and thought, hey, that'll work in a math textbook. So Roman numerals. And you never know with a stock image. It may sit for years before it gets used, and there'll be more on that in a bit. But keep your eye open for stuff like this, because you never know. It's a boring image, but it's a sellable image. Remember in 2019 when all the CBD products hit? Me too. I was at the pharmacy picking up a prescription, and they had a rack full of these gummies. So I immediately thought, that'd be a good prop. So I bought a bottle, and we, working with my wife, set up a few shots. Here's one of them, this licensed. Not more than a month or two later for $50. And bear in mind, since about 2014, the split for the photographer has gone down to 50%. So at this point, I haven't made my money back on this, although I think another version did sell, so maybe I'm close. But chances are this kind of image is going to sell more in the future. Here's a pretty picture I enjoyed taking. This is LaSalle Canyon waterfall at Starved Rock State Park. And the cool thing about this waterfall is that you can walk behind it. Of course, it's a pretty bright day. You might look at that highlight on the left there and think it's blown out. It's not. That's actually down within the dynamic range of the camera. But guess what? This is never sold, and the chances of it selling are not that great. I had gotten there early, but even so, there were still two people in this image that I removed using Luminar 4. But that's when the crowd started showing up, and within half an hour, I took another shot. So about half an hour, maybe 20 minutes after I took that last photo, this is what the area around the waterfall looked like. So I walked up the trail to just beyond the highlight that you saw in that last photo, set my tripod up actually, and took several photos of all these folks and the waterfall. And also I shot these last June of 2020. So we were deep into the pandemic. Within a short amount of time, maybe a couple months, this image was licensed by the National Geographic for use on their website. License fee was $75, which is still that's pretty good online. And they used it in a story about how state parks were dealing with the pandemic. So if you're out taking landscape photos, make sure that in addition to the pretty pictures that you take some photos with people in them, because you're going to find those, if you're doing stock, those are the ones that are going to sell. The pretty landscape pictures, less so, unless maybe you're a top name in landscape photography. But, we're not all top names. So bear that in mind. Speaking of the National Geographic, here is an image that they licensed this year. For an article, online article about Lowhead dams, which are a dangerous water hazard. This is the Lowhead Dam on the Milwaukee River at Grafton, Wisconsin, which is a northern suburb of Milwaukee. I was traveling on business. When I used to travel on business frequently, I took a small camera, in this case a LUMIX GX85 with the kit lens, a 12 to 32 millimeter, that little pancake zoom, which is more than competent optically. Kit lenses that I have used have generally been decent to very good optically. Not always built real well, but if you're careful with them, they last a long time. So I saw this guy fishing next to the dam and grabbed a shot. Now, bear in mind that, at least in the United States, for editorial use, you do not need a model release for people in the picture like this one or the previous one at Starved Rock. But if you're not in the United States, check your local laws, because each country is different. In some countries, that's not going to be the case. But in the United States, editorial use is fine. If you use this commercially, then you're going to have a problem if the person sees it and decide they don't want to be in your advertisement. And you may get sued, and that suit may cost you quite a bit. So, make sure you understand your local rules when you're doing this. Because if you're in a country that does not allow even editorial use for people in public, you're going to have to be really careful about this. And that brings us to the final image, at least for this video. This is Lincoln Park at the South Lagoon, just north of downtown Chicago. And the snow's just begun to fall. There's a guy walking his dog on the other side of the lagoon. There's another person to the right, if you see over in the shadow at the right, wearing a blue jacket. And this is kind of a gray, some might say boring, drab image. So who would license an image like this? Well, I'm not going to share with you who it was, but this was licensed by a clothing retailer for a worldwide advertising campaign. And the gross amount of the license was $4,000. And that included in-store displays, brochures, online use, so an entire advertising package. And what they did was they essentially photoshopped in a model covering up that guy with the dog. And the model was wearing one of their articles of outdoor clothing. And of course, that person on the right, that's easy enough to get rid of in Photoshop. You do that in one click. So you never know. This image sat for 11 years. It licensed in 2018. So it sat for 11 years, didn't get licensed one time, and then when it did, it essentially hit the jackpot. So I don't want to lead people astray. This is a rare occurrence. It obviously made my 2018 a lot better than my average year, but you never know. Things like this can happen, and don't toss an image because you think it's gray and boring. One of the important things I did learn from this was that when you log into your stock photo account to check your sales over morning coffee, make sure that you don't have a full mouth of coffee when you look, because I saw this one and just about came close to spitting my coffee out. Well, I hope you found that interesting. If you have any comments, questions, of course, feel free to leave those below. And if this was useful, interesting, please like and subscribe. Also, coming up in some upcoming videos, last Friday, we had a cold front go through, and again, the wind came in off of Lake Michigan straight down the full length of the lake, and it was actually better than the previous time that happened. We had surf up to 8 feet. So the kite surfers were out, and I went down to get stills and video of those kite surfers, and they're really fast. So it's actually, doing video is kind of tough. So I'll put that video up within the next week or so and give some tips on what I discovered you need to be aware of when you're doing this type of thing, because I've done this before, but not a lot. And I'm also planning a video. If you noticed, sometimes I have an end slide that says photography and more. So I am not always going to talk about photography or videography, probably most of the time, but I'm thinking of doing a video about expertise. And of course that that relates to photography. So just going to some thoughts on what it takes to become an expert in anything, and why we need to be really careful about listening to people who think they're experts, but they're really not. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.